Right then, everyone, we are now live. As always, thank you so much indeed for everyone who is subscribed. As always, we really appreciate that. We appreciate everyone who kind of jumps in and kind of supports us by subscribing. So if you are not a subscriber, please do jump down to that bottom and subscribe on it. Hit the notification bells. And yes, running a little bit late with the actual start. I know that I usually kind of go on this about 3 minutes to go. But if anything, it gives me a little bit of time to kind of get some housekeeping, as always. Supporters that are donating to our Patreon, as always, thank you so much indeed for allowing us to keep the lights on. As I've explained on social media recently, this year's going to be very difficult, considering that it looks like the thing that keeps me permanently employed and with money coming in is not happening again for a considerable length of time, because as a mobile DJ, obviously no work, so we're kind of we're looking for alternatives. And basically what I do with this, with the everything that we do with the show, it's down to you guys, and it allows us to keep doing what we do. So thank you so much. As always as well, we've got ourselves a little bit of housekeeping with something that I didn't do for the last couple of shows, and I'm going to explain why. Basically what we usually do is this. We live stream every Sunday, 6 p.m. GMT on Facebook, Periscope, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and my Patreon page as well. For that, what we do is a live stream right now, which everyone can watch publicly, and after half an hour the live stream on all the platforms closes, and it continues as an exclusive stream for our Patreon supporters. It's a way for me to give back and say thank you to everybody who supports on Patreon. The audio version of this episode will be uploaded tomorrow at midday GMT on SoundCloud, Spotify, and on iTunes. I haven't got the last 2 episodes up, the incidental with the guys behind the Department of Truth, and also the Elsa Chatiria episode from last week. Those will be going up tomorrow, because I've just needed to finish editing off those. And then the full complete episode will be re-uploaded on Wednesday for everyone to watch. So that will be the conversation that you're going to see with myself, Jason Inman, and also Joel Meadows a little bit later. So that's the way that the whole thing goes. And it, of course, starts with a little bit of a video. So, shall we do this? Let's do this. Hi there, welcome along to Talkin Con, a cup of tea with an Englishman in San Diego. I have my tea. I know for the last couple of episodes I haven't had the chance to get myself a cup of tea to hand, but I needed one today. Because this week, for a whole panoply of reasons, not only technical, because I've been preparing a video presentation which has taken part as part of the Lakes International Comic Art Festival, it went live, what, 2 hours ago? So it's been to the wire to get that ready. But stuff and nonsense, and definitely life has kind of thrown a curveball at me this week. Considering that, I think it's safe to say this has been one of the longest weeks of everybody's life, considering that Donald Trump was tested positive for COVID 9 days ago. Didn't that feel like a month ago now? It just feels like an eternity. It's so strange. But we're here. We're going to do a show, and this is what kind of keeps me going each week. I enjoy the Talkin Con. I enjoy you guys coming along as well, and basically joining together as we celebrate these shows that we can't go to. Considering we've got two big virtual conventions that are happening this weekend, we'll get into those as well. We've got all sorts of stuff which we're going to talk about. We're going to talk to Joel Meadows later on in the show as well. He's got a new Kickstarter, so he's going to come on and say hi. We've got some people who are joining us already. We've got Clydeen Nee. Hello, Clydeen. Great to see you joining us. Hope you're well. And Solistra Smeg is joining us as well. What's up, everyone? Hey, listen, thank you so much indeed for coming on. Let's dive straight into it then. We have our first guest on, and it's a pleasure to join Jason Inman to the show. Hello there, Jason. How the hell are you, sir?
Hello, sir. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. We have kind of met. I doubt you remember, but
okay.
We kind of met. The cap may ring a couple of bells. I don't know, but I'm a big friend of Tony Kim's.
Here Within.
And the last San Diego Comic Con I went to, which was 2018, because this year was going to be my grand return to San Diego Comic Con. I went to see Tony on the Sunday just to say goodbye, just hope that everything had gone well with the booth, except this son of a bitch just took up all of his time with the conversation, and clearly that there was this banter going on, this real strong rapport, and I didn't want to interrupt. So I just stood behind you, Jason, and let you get on with it. So.
I do not remember that. I'm sorry, but
don't worry about it.
Tony is a good friend of ours, and we like to always check in with him at the end of like every con and be like, "How'd you do? Was this a good con?" Like, just because his Hero Within has like blown up since it originally started, and we always like to go over and check with him and see like what shirt's selling the best and what shirt, like what did fans like at this con, and like why didn't they like this stupid jacket that's really cool. But so I apologize if you were attempting to do the same thing and we stole all your time.
Listen, it was very clear that the thing is, I can hardly interrupt you because I know that at cons you're a busy boy. You keep yourself nice. You're a busy bee, so I get it. So you wouldn't have had time to speak to Tony before then, so I totally understand that.
Feel free to interrupt me in the future.
No, not at all. So I think for people who perhaps don't know who you are, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I'm really curious to know what you actually put on your passport as your occupation, because you wear many hats, sir. So Jason Inman, introduce yourself to my Talking Con.
Well, if you don't know, I am a writer. I'm an author. I'm a podcaster. Most people will probably remember me from the 3 years that I hosted DC All Access with Tiffany Smith and the DC Comics YouTube channel. Basically, if you looked at anything DC, you saw my face there, and I apologize ahead of time for that. Ever since then, I have been writing comic books with and without my awesome co-writer, Ashley Victoria Robinson. I published a book called Super Soldiers, and for the last 2.5 years, I've been working in television at CBS. So that's where I've been for the last, but primarily a writer, even though I do a podcast just like yourself called Geek History Lesson. And we've been doing that for like 6 years now, which is insane.
It flies, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
It really does. To be fair, the running joke is 2020, what a fun decade this has been.
Yes.
So the time has been this very fluid thing.
By the way, I want to point out for your audience, I also am drinking tea, but it's iced green tea.
I am on Yorkshire tea.
All right.
Because Yorkshire tea has been advertising some very strange concoctions, and I had to pick some up yesterday because they've been doing a kind of viral marketing thing where they've been doing some very strange flavors for their teas with the basic intention of disturbing their fans and people who drink tea. For example, this one is a rich tea biscuit tea. So it's actually got kind of like the taste of a biscuit in the tea already. So listen, I thought I'd give it a go, and you know what?
What do you think? What's the verdict?
I'm not throwing up. So what's the Homer Simpson? The Homer Simpson line. I passed the test. I didn't go blind. So yeah.
For the bathtub gin, is that why? Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah,
something like that.
Is that the standard for tea in England? Is that if you don't throw up, it's good? It's considered good?
No, not at all.
Because I would hope there's a
Although,
higher standard.
oh well, I mean, I was actually going to be having merch this year.
Okay.
And the idea was, there's an infamous post that Douglas Adams did. I think he did it for The Guardian, but he then posted up on his own blog, which was basically an instruction manual on how to make a proper cup of tea, especially for Americans as well. Considering that, I'm sorry guys, you don't know how to make a cup of tea. As somebody who's been to enough restaurants in the States. And ask for a cup of tea, English style, or warm tea. Yeah, you basically teabag as hot as literally as the kettle is boiled. Boil the tea, let it steep for 5 minutes, and then put a bit of milk in or whatever you want to put in, and just as warm and hot as possible. And just it's an odd one. Just getting people to drink tea is a strange thing. But there we go.
I am a tea guy. I will say that.
Good man.
I am a tea guy. Although I will admit, I'm not quite from the South. I'm from Kansas, but I'm very much an iced tea guy. But I do drink a lot of warm tea. I do drink a lot of hot teas as well.
Yeah.
But that's what happens when you have a wife from the Commonwealth. I have a Canadian wife. So
yeah, I mean, considering that we've been seeing a number of viral videos this year of the one that did the rounds was an American lady, can't tell you where she was from, but saying, this is how you make English tea. You take the tea bag, you get the water, and you put it in the microwave. And here in the UK, you could actually feel laptops being hurled across walls. And what? No,
you can feel this like giant consciousness saying, we're going to start the revolution again, and we're going to come get you and bring you back in. That's how mad we are.
Something like that. Something like that.
We're going to bring you back into the empire.
Yeah.
Forcibly.
So, I usually been starting these shows with 3 questions. We've asked the first one, which is what tea you're drinking, which is great.
Sure.
Number 2, can you remember the first Comic Con that you went to, and did you attend as a pro or as a fan? How old were you? What show did you go to?
So I grew up in an area where there weren't a lot of cons at all. There weren't a lot of comic book shops at all, even. So Southeast Kansas, you're literally 2 hours from everything, basically. Any major city. You're a 2-hour drive from every major city. So the first con I went to ever was a Star Trek convention.
My first one was a Star Trek convention as well.
I think it was a Wizard World.
Oh, right. Okay.
And it was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it would have been sometime in like 2008, 2009, like somewhere in there. So I was post college. But I went because I had just never gone before, and I think they had a special on tickets. They were like, "Oh, it's $10," and I was like, "Let's go! How bad can it be for $10?"
Yeah, for myself, it was same drill. It was a Star Trek, but it was a specifically Star Trek convention. Myself and my best friend Neil Sykes, Neil, who was the one that basically. We had introduced ourselves. I was DJing, I must have been 2021, something like that. He came up and introduced himself. We started talking. I think he asked for Tapao.
The actual Tapao.
Tapao,
Okay.
Heart and Soul or whatever, the 80s band. At which point I went, Star Trek. And he went, you're a nerd as well. I said, yes, I am. And he said, I collect the VHS copies of The Next Generation. I said, that's very good. Excellent stuff. And we kind of swapped numbers. This was on the Saturday night. On Wednesday morning, and remember, as a 21-year-old DJ, I do not do mornings.
Yeah.
At 9 o'clock in the morning, I get a banging on the door, and Neil came round with a bin bag, a rubbish bag of VHS tapes. I'd never met him before. He just went, there's Next Generation. I think there's the first 4 seasons there. Off you go. What? I don't know. And instantly we became best friends. And
Awesome.
about a month later, he'd spotted on local television or something that Star Trek were doing this convention. And we went along just pure. I think we went along just purely to take the piss. I think majority of it was just to just go, look at the nerds. But we just fell hard. It was just so much fun to just wander around and really get into the nooks and crannies of fandom. And I think that's where we kind
Yeah.
of
My
I fell in love.
my first comic convention was still as a fan, and it was actually San Diego Comic Con.
Nice.
It was so I think it was around like right after that convention, that summer. I had taken a summer job out here in California, even though I was still living back in Oklahoma and around there. And I had saw like on Twitter that San Diego Comic Con was this weekend. And I was like, oh man, let's go. I convinced a bunch of people. I was like, let's just go on Sunday. Let's go for Sunday. And this was back, I think this was 2009. You could still buy Sunday tickets the week of. And they were only $30, which is the reason why I got a bunch of people to go with me. And I remember we went and like just being like overwhelmed and being like, oh my God, like this is, but that I remember that was such a fun time. And I love that we were able just to pick up the tickets. Like we didn't even buy them online. We walked up to the door of the convention center, got in that line and bought the tickets there.
Nice.
So it's crazy to
Nice.
think about how much has changed in like a decade.
I think my year, the first year I went was 2010, and mine was the last year before things just went
Yeah.
stupid. Um, it was my first year in San Diego. It was first year California, first year in America. It was the centerpiece to my honeymoon. Was that particular trip. And I had $200 in my back pocket as spend for that day. Oh, I just happened to have it on me. This was on the Sunday. Caroline was in Ballroom 20 for Sons of Anarchy panel. And I was just walking through sales, and there's the ticket or the badge sales booth. Badges available. And I just went up and bought next year's because it was supposed to be a one and done. It was supposed to be a bucket list thing. We weren't supposed to be going back. Next thing you know, I'm sitting next to Caroline in Ballroom 20 going, just to let you know, I bought badges for next year. And she went, I'm fine with that. And we just we kept going every year. So yeah, that was an addiction. For first Comic Con,
Yeah.
I think it would have been a convention called MCon. Here in the NCon, nice, sorry, here in the UK, which is very much about comics, no pop culture stuff. So it's very much like the 2000 AD guys, small press, Beano, Dandy, all the British comics here in the UK. I got a sketch from Carlos Esquerra. I met like Duncan Fegredo. It was just incredible.
Yeah.
I met Declan Shalvey as well, and that kind of thing. So it was just that was the moment I knew I'd found my tribe.
Nice.
Because it was a case of these are people who were passionate about something.
How many years after the TNG tapes was that?
Sorry?
And how many years after the TNG tapes was that?
That would have been about 7-8 years.
Okay.
Something
All
like
right.
that.
Yeah. I remember when we went to that 2009 San Diego Comic Con. I remember thinking the same thing, being like, "Oh, I got to come back to this place," because we only did the one day, and thinking like, "Oh, there's no way you can do this in one day. You need to see all of it." But it was also, again, like seeing like what it was like last year compared to then. I remember walking through the DC booth, and I was able to get. I got Jim Lee to sign my comic. I got Grant Morrison to sign my comic. A different comic. And then I remember looking over, and Jeff Johns was sitting there at a table, and he had no line. There was nobody there. So I walked over to, and I was like, I talked to Jeff Johns about Legion of Superheroes for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, but like that is impossible now. You can't do that now.
I think the closest I've had to that was MCM. Here in the UK. MCM certainly 2 years ago, and 2 years ago, just prior or around the time which ReedPOP bought MCM. They were still incredibly known as a pop culture convention. They had some comics stuff, and they had a very established comics village setup, but still very kind of, you had to know that there was a comics section there to really kind of head to it. And Jeff Darrow came over. He was ReedPOP had just bought the company. They now were throwing a lot of money into getting some great creators over to meet fans. And this was MCM Scotland, and Jeff Darrow was there, and there was no tablecloth because they hadn't prepared a tablecloth for him. He had handwritten a sign which he had stuck with sellotape to the front, and there was no. It was heartbreaking to see.
Yeah.
When you see it, I mean, obviously it's a different scenario 2009 because that was just before the crowds just went loopy. But even this was 2016, 17, something like that. 2018, sorry, when ReedPOP bought MCM, and just to see a creator like that, of that stature, just kind of sat there, I was heartbroken. But
I remember going to one of my first Long Beach Comic Cons. And it was before Long Beach Comic Con has kind of done the same thing. Like Long Beach Comic Con has kind of exploded as well. But I remember the first Long Beach Comic Con I went to was somewhere in like 2011, 2012. And it was literally in a tiny little banquet. And it was tables of dusty comics. And here and there, you would see a creator. That was it. It was one room. And now it's like actually become like a really cool convention. It's become like a really cool convention to go meet like all the creators that live in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I remember I went there and I walked in and I saw Len Wein was there, and people were just walking right past them. Like nobody like cared. And you know, and so I went and talked to Len Wein for a while because I was like, this is the dude that basically created Wolverine, you know, and Swamp Thing and all these other characters. And I was like, I can't believe, like, you know, you'd see people just walk past them and go flip through the long boxes. And I'm like, I guarantee you're flipping past like 5 books that were created by Len Wein.
Yeah. Certainly for myself, especially when it comes to San Diego Comic Con, I actually didn't go into the artist alley for a good couple of years. I think purely because I was just intimidated by the creators of the other side of the table. These were people that had basically invented and thought up and drawn and written the stories that I'd grown up reading. And I was thinking, what have I possibly got to say to this person? And certainly when I started this show, and when for the first couple of years, I tried to do kind of like specialist episodes, workshop episodes about, okay, let's just try and break some of that barrier down, because you've got to go and meet these people. They're there for a reason. If you kind of change the term comic to, I don't know, mattress convention, it's a trade show. They are there to meet you. They are there to sell stuff. They are there to do artwork and sell that to you. You've got to kind of break that barrier down and actually talk to people. So it's now the place I gravitate to more than most areas in conventions now. I was about to say, where do you kind of find yourself heading to?
Well, I'm lucky enough now that I know enough people that will be in those areas, and that was the biggest bummer about no San Diego Comic Con this year, was because there are a lot of people like yourself that live across the ponds on either side of the ocean. And the only time I see them every year is San Diego Comic Con. So I usually always go to Artist Alley at every con first, just to see like, oh, do I know anybody here?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I put that question up. I'm actually going to read that one. I'm going to read that one out because it's a good one, is this. So Into the Blue Mister, the no queue thing happened to me at San Diego Comic Con in 2013 when Adam Hughes moved from his table in Artist Alley to another one upstairs in the sales pavilion. I had him to myself for a good 10 minutes. You do find yourself kind of, especially at San Diego, because it's so big now and there are so many corners to hide in. I mean, I'm gonna forget his first name. From Doctor Strange, Wong.
Oh, Benedict.
Benedict Wong. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He was upstairs at a signing table, and there was nobody going up to him. And because I was actually
Talk to that guy.
I was yeah. I mean, I was
Yeah.
unfortunately, I was hosting a panel at that time, so I was rushing from one room to the other. Otherwise, I would have just stopped and gone, "Okay, fellow Brit, you need someone to say keep you company until somebody comes up and talks to you." I was blown away by just how he was being dismissed by that. But
Such an interesting thing. Like I don't generally journey up to the sales pavilion. That's that weird area that's sort of the bridge between the two kind of conventions. I mean, really like to the panels and to the Bang Hall. But
yeah,
what an interesting choice. That Adam Hughes is like, I want to go up there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, I get what they've done with that area now because it's now more administration for the convention.
Mm-hmm.
It's where they put kind of like porta cabins up for the staff and the organizers, and kind of it's their own little office now. They've moved it all from the front promenade of the front corridor of the convention center.
Mm-hmm.
And moved it upstairs. But I remember when I first started going, 2010, they had the art show up there, and it was brilliant.
I remember that.
You could pass it, and you could go in and see this incredible artwork that had been submitted to SDCC,
Mm-hmm.
and they were showing it off, and I thought that was incredible. The fact that it's now, or would have been now, buried over at the Manchester Grand Hyatt, which I think is a bit of a crying shame.
I agree, because nobody will wander over there. It's so weird. Like, yeah, every time they put events over there, I'm like, nobody's going over there, man. Like nobody. You're lucky if you can find it.
True. And the other question that I usually ask is wobbly knees moments. Those times that you remember at conventions, meeting heroes, meeting people that have inspired you over the years, where you've just all of a sudden gone very cotton-mouthed, and the brain has decided to take a vacation 5 foot to the left.
That's a good one, man. For me, there's a lot of them. So that's hard to distinguish like a singular one. I've one of them. I've always been a huge fan of Dan Jurgens, and I remember the first time I got to meet Dan Jurgens. This is leading to that moment. The first time I got to interview Dan Jurgens, and I was very nervous, because when I think of Superman, I see Dan Jurgens Superman. And Superman is like one of my, of course, like being from Kansas, like you sort of have to love Superman. It is a prerequisite of being from that state, because from our state, we have two famous people, and they're both fictional, and it's Dorothy Gale from The Wizard of Oz, and it's Superman. So, I remember I got to interview Dan Jurgens for DC. Like he came to the office to do that stuff. And I remember very shortly after I went and did Planet Comic Con in Kansas City as a guest, and down the alleyway or down the aisle, Dan Jurgens had a table. And I remember I walked by and I was like, oh, I won't bother him. Like, cause he was talking to a fan, and he saw me, and like Rena was like, hello, Jason. And I was like, and so I let up and talked to him. And it was very lovely. One of them, I'll tell you, one person that always gets me every time I talk to him is Grant Morrison. Every time I talk to Grant Morrison at a convention, if he's signing or whatever, I just feel like I'm getting a direct conversation to the creative consciousness of the world. Like I feel like I'm talking to the subconscious of every writer everywhere. And so like I just want to like soak as much of that in as I can.
I mean, I've spoken to and I've interviewed a number of his co-creators and his artists. I've always wanted to ask the question, and I've never had the bottle to do it, which is Grant Morrison, especially when you read his scripts, he's incredibly literate, he's incredibly clever, and he's incredibly well read. I've always wanted to know if his artists feel intimidated and whether they feel that they have to be as clever as he is, just to kind of keep up. I've always wondered if it's like, or whether he's just faking it. he's just doing a very good job of doing the Grand Wizard thing.
I don't know, man. I don't think he is. I really, really don't think he is. It's the same thing like I read that Alan Moore interview that he recently did about his new film, The Show. And there were a couple words that Alan Moore used that I was like, I don't know what that word is. I'm going to have to look that up. I honestly don't know what that word means. And so that immediately made me be like, okay, I understand how that brain made Watchmen, because he's obviously way smarter than I am.
I get that. The thing I find it interesting that you say that you very rarely get nervous now, or you haven't. Certainly, it's one of those prerequisites to doing what we do. That whole idea of sitting into a room and just diving into conversation. For myself, like I said at the beginning, I'm a mobile DJ, and I've kind of, from the word go with my training of that, I'm Leonard Sultana, and then there's Lenny Sultana. There's the DJ, and I just turn him on, and I'm the gregarious guy that's on camera and just up on stage with a microphone, and I can rock a room. That's fine. Then there's the shy guy that's at home reading his comics and doing what he needs to do and eating tea with his wife. With yourself, is that a similar kind of thing, or are you naturally kind of quite gregarious anyway? What's your approach to that?
I have learned to become gregarious. I have learned to become that person. I will say a big reason why I'm not too nervous about meeting creators anymore is because in terms of our work, and I've gone and tabled at conventions with our books and stuff like that, you learn very quickly that once you sit on the other side of that table and you're the comic book creator and you have your books up there, you realize that, like, oh, you understand the feeling of some days you're just bored and you just want to talk to somebody, or some days you're just like, man, I am like too hungover. I really don't want to talk to somebody. And here comes a fan. Like, you kind of understand that. And you kind of, for me anyways, I can pick up those signals now. Like, I can like walk down an aisle and be like, okay, that person didn't sleep well last night. I won't bother them right now. Or that person's trying to complete a commission. I won't bother them that right now. Or, oh, that person's really bored. I'm going to go talk to them. So I can kind of spot that. But another part of that was one of the greatest gifts that working for DC Comics gave me was being able to talk to all these creators. And I talked to basically everybody that worked at that company. Like every artist and writer probably like was working on titles from like 2015 to 2017. I guarantee you I probably talked to them at least once. And there were people in that I was so nervous to meet, like Grant Morrison's. One of the ones I was so nervous to meet was Brian Hitch. I was very nervous to meet Brian Hitch. And the person that I was probably the most nervous to meet, because I had loved his work for so long, was Howard Porter. Because my favorite Justice League run is the JLA Grant Morrison run. And I brought my copy of JLA for him to sign and stuff like that. And I was super nervous. And then he showed up, and luckily the very first thing he said to me was, he was like, I'm very nervous about this interview. And so it immediately broke all the tension. It was like, oh, okay, cool. We're on the same page. We're just two gentlemen here just talking.
Fair enough. I asked a question of somebody at I think it was one of the San Diego Comic Con panels. And I'm going to ask you it because
Sure.
it was an interesting answer that I got. Especially as somebody that, like you say, has put yourself very much in the forefront and the camera of nerd culture and pop culture. At what point did you start noticing that people were recognizing you going down the aisle when you were wandering around? And how did that make you feel that suddenly you were somebody that people knew more about than you knew about them? Straight off the bat, that kind of instant, oh, hi Jason, how's Ashley, how is everybody, and how's the dog? And you just go, oh, hang on a second.
It's so it's funny. So it was probably the second San Diego Comic Con as DC, because the first one, I started DC at like February, and then we went to that first one, and I don't think it had finally caught up. The second one is where everybody, I started noticing eyes. And a lot of it was people. Actually, it's funny. People don't know my name as much as they think they do. I got a lot of "Hey, DC guy."
Oh, right, okay.
Or people would be like, "Oh, you're Jason, that DC guy," but they couldn't pull my last name.
I get Englishman.
Okay.
I think I was walking through Hall H, and I was just through that front corridor.
Yeah.
In front of the seating, and I hear Englishman. I went, I'm absolutely certain I'm not the only one in this room. But thank you very much indeed. Yeah, thanks for that.
No, I mean, for me, it was nice. It was just, I mean, I think it's cool because I'm still flummoxed that anybody will listen to any of my podcasts or read my books or do anything, watch any video with me. So if you recognize me, I'm very impressed and like very flattered that you have taken that brain space away to think about me.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's Joss Whedon that I asked. And, well, the way I worded it was, I have started being spotted from doing my podcast, and people have started approaching me, and I'm starting to feel a little bit famous.
Yeah.
And the second I asked the question, and I asked it like that, and the thing is, it's on camera. It's actually it's online as well. I sound like the most arrogant prick in the world. Oh yeah, well I'm getting famous now. How did you handle it? I'm just what? Even watching it back, I want to slap myself.
But you didn't intend it that way though.
No.
Yeah. So.
But it came across that way. It didn't matter what you intend.
Oh yeah. I imagine the YouTube comments are pretty terrible.
I just get a lot of people going, "You pillock. What were you thinking?" With this year, then, I mean, talking about conventions with the love that we have, and we love these events, and we love them going ahead. The second that the end of March kicked in, and I believe it was Emerald City was the last one, and the hammer came down. And the fact that it came down so hard and so fast, and everything just got shut down. It's just one of those very awkward and odd situations where fans of pop culture like us, where we go to these events to not only celebrate the things that we love, but also ourselves as a community, which is why I do this show, because we have this community on this side of the table that just we are going to see our friends as well as seeing the people on the other side. For yourself, it's obviously doubly difficult because it's also your part of your employment to go to these shows. So you've got the virtual conventions. Have they filled the gap? Have they actually managed to fill that void for you? Or is it still very much lacking?
I would say 50%. Because, to be honest with you, I like the panels much better at all these virtual cons than I've ever liked the panels at, say, San Diego Comic Con or somewhere like that. I think they just get to the point faster. You actually are able to have better guests because, you know, a guest can just tune in from their home. They don't have to actually go to the city. But I think in terms of the community or in terms of like artists trying to make any kind of income, no, I don't think they have filled in. But I will say this, I think a lot of the virtual cons have done so well that, and I think they've been a lot of fun. And you can see that because like even Star Trek made their own little virtual con and DC did their own little virtual con. I don't think virtual cons are going to go anywhere. And actually, I would actually suggest to any cons out there, like Planet Comic Cons, or not the big ones, but I would be like, even if you're going to have actual in-person panels, I would still have some virtual panels as well. You know, like if you have,
it's definitely a case of, I mean, we talk about the new normal and stuff, the virtual convention, but I think the reason why that is because of the way that they've evolved so quickly since March. I mean, were you part of the first mainframe? Because I know you were part of the last one.
I think so. Yeah, I was. I think so. I think I was part of the first one.
So, I mean,
I get confused because I think they've had 3 of them now, right?
Yeah, they have. Yeah. And that first one, it was pretty much one of the first ones out the gate.
Yeah.
And it was clear that they knew what was going on in terms of the technology. They were using StreamYard like we're using right now. So it's something that was very quickly manageable, especially to get guests in, because for anyone who doesn't know who's watching this is just watching it as a live stream.
Mhm.
The thing about StreamYard is it's one of the lowest maintenance platforms going. You just send a link out to someone, they open up a browser, and they're in. So just to get people in through as guests who are at home and they weren't doing anything, and they had this opportunity, this window of opportunity to get as many great guests as possible for that first one, and we've had them on the show, and he turned around and said that it was great because everyone was just bored. They were sat at home, they wanted to go and interact with people. This was a way they could do it. But even then, it was very basic. It was something that was put together, and then you had the likes of Wales Comic Con going to Twitch or something, and it was they were still learning. And I'd say for the first 2-3 months, everyone was still learning. But now you have New York Comic Con, you have you have Metaverse, you have San Diego Comic Con, which was the first one to really plant the flag on the moon with the big event, virtual convention. The learning curve has been so fast, which has impressed and also intimidated me, because I'm now wondering whether we're reaching that point where the people with the money are starting to realize that, okay, it's not a temporary thing now. This is something we're going to have to get right and get done properly, which is why you've got the ReedPOP Metaverse, which is, I mean, that is not a cheap setup by any stretch of the imagination.
No. But the advantage of that, and you can see it from like a corporate aspect, right? That when you look at a lot of the New York Comic Con panels, they were recorded 2 weeks ago. So in terms of a giant corporation, that is perfect because they can record it. They can give it to all the publicists. They can like take it up and down the corporate ladder. Check mark, check mark, check mark. Oh, we need to cut that. Okay, we can edit that out. So like the problem with it is it does get rid of the live thing. But I think I would not be surprised if going forward there is a DC fandom every year. I would not be surprised if there's like a virtual Star Trek convention every year on top of, these conventions. Because I one thing I know is from working from DC is that going to San Diego Comic Con, going to New York Comic Con, building that giant booth, bringing all those creators, because they it's their money that is flying all these creators. That is a lot of capital. And if they can get the same bang for less buck virtually, I think they're going to do it because they are a business at the end of the day. So I could see a lot of these. It's funny. I think this year in these virtual Comic Cons could lead to San Diego going back to the way it was in 2010. Like I could see it decreasing.
That was going to be the next question then.
Yeah.
Could this put a lot of conventions on both sides of the pond in some real jeopardy? Because
I think so.
There's not going to be the audience to justify it, because people will quite. I mean, then again, there is a part 2 to this question, so we'll come back to.
Well, I mean, just quite honestly, is all right, Emerald City Comic Con 2021 is Emerald City Comic Con. Is it March or April? I forget. Is it March?
March.
It's March. Yeah. Okay. I honestly, right now, I don't know if I feel comfortable going to a convention in March of next year.
You're not the only one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember who it was I spoke to. I mean, that was the other advantage of doing this podcast throughout lockdown. All of a sudden, my guest list went through the roof. I had some great names coming on, so it was great. But I had the likes of, Paul Jenkins was one.
I saw you had Scott Snyder, right?
Scott Snyder. I mean, but Scott, he didn't say it because we didn't get into this conversation, but I think we got into a couple of, certainly the Legacy, like Bill Sienkiewicz interview. And they were just, and I was asking them when they would feel that they would be comfortable to go to a convention again. And I was thinking they were going to say, okay, when things have calmed down around February, March, whatever. Without a shadow from all of them, they all just said, until there's a cure, until there's what's the word? A
vaccine.
Vaccine, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know where the hell that word vanished to. Until there is a vaccine, I'm not leaving this basement. I'm not going anywhere. And I just that finite answer was that was a wake up call, because that means a whole generation of legacy creators aren't going to be leaving their house to go and meet and greet fans, which Obviously, we would love them to see them again.
Yeah.
But they're not going to go anywhere until this is resolved.
And I don't blame them. I mean, it's funny because we all like to talk about like 2021, right? But in the current world, I honestly think it's 2022 at the earliest.
Wow.
I really do. Even I could see there could be a scenario where San Diego is on next year. I could totally see that. But I still think you're going to have a little bit of uncertainty on both sides in terms of fans and creators both being like, look, even if there's a vaccine, even if the numbers are going down, I could still see fans and creators being like, I don't think it's gone through enough of the population yet. I'm not going to chance it.
Right.
If I just wait another year, it'll be fine.
Yeah. At which point then, I'm wondering if in actual fact then we have reached a nadir with virtual conventions. And actually, but I think it was actually DC Fandom which kind of brought this on, because I think it was so much, it was so well produced, it was so slick, and it was also quite an effort to watch it, because it was limited in the time that it was on.
Yeah,
so
that's the only.
You had to invest in that time.
They should pilfer those out into YouTube, I think.
You'd think. I know that a couple of the panels are on there. But the reason why I bring that up is because, I mean, I did a post for the Convention Collective, the site that I run.
Sure.
And it's got the view counts of the panels that were on. And I'm looking at it now. I mean, this is the top 10 of the numbers. And this was a week after. And we're talking like Vikings at nearly 245,000 views. Mutants at 210. And they were clocking up some pretty impressive numbers all the way through that. I'm going to bring in, I'm going to stop that and bring the screen in. And this is the YouTube page for New York Comic Con.
Okay.
And I'm just going to have a quick look at some of the numbers. And they're not great.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm guaranteeing that Metaverse, ReedPOP, they were hoping or expecting more than this, because I brought this up with the Mainframe guys, whether there is this, because we were talking with the Mainframe guys, and we were talking about how there was no chatter about Metaverse, about Lakes International Comic Art Festival, which is happening this weekend. There was no energy, there was no buzz.
Yeah,
and I'm also seeing a lot of people talking about New York Comic Con and this content. They didn't even know it was going on.
I was one of those. To be honest with you, when I started seeing some of the articles uploading onto Deadline, and they were talking about this news from New York Comic Con, I was like, New York Comic Con is this week? Like, yeah, I had no idea, because we're so far removed from everything now.
Yeah.
If this was a normal year, I would know exactly when New York Comic Con is, but like,
I'm actually wondering as well if it's because it's so close to the election as well. Everyone's getting tied up with the real world stuff.
Yes, I mean, I will say that, like, it's funny. I was thinking about running a Kickstarter for another comic book that I'm working on right now, and I was gonna put it in November, because the classical knowledge is don't put it in December because everybody's buying Christmas gifts, which is and wait till the first of the year. And so I was like, okay, cool. I have to put it in November, and then I saw the election was the first week in November, and I was like, oh boy, I don't know. Like, depending on how this election goes, people might not even care about comic books a week after the election.
Yeah.
So I bumped it to 2021.
Well, I mean, the certainly for the period of lockdown, Kickstarters went through the roof.
Yes.
And I was surprised at just how well they were doing, but everyone was just kind of looking for a distraction. They weren't spending money on going out and gas bills, petrol or whatever. So they were looking for something. Just out of curiosity as well, the question I've been asking people is the content that you've been taking in over lockdown, is it brand new stuff and voraciously taking in everything new on Netflix or Amazon, or is it being comfort food and you've just been watching Community for a week?
It's a lot of it has been a little bit. It's been half and half, right? It's Our comfort food, you might like this quite a bit, is we discovered Grand Designs.
Yes.
Yeah. We discovered Grand Designs because they put a season on Netflix, and we watched the season, and then we were like, we got to watch all of this. And so I now have such an appreciation for Grand Designs and Kevin MacLeod, and I now desperately want to meet Kevin MacLeod because I am going to tell him that he saved my 2020 with all his design and architecture. So
I keep thinking about Grand Designs and going, you know what? If I had 100,000, I would just buy a house, and I would do it up if it wasn't for my lack of engineering skills, electrical, water, plumbing. How to actually build a house. Yeah, I could do that. I could. Yeah, and just no, it's insane.
See, that's a weird thing. That's a weird fact that a lot of people might not know about me is that I weirdly could probably build a house. I did a lot of carpentry and plumbing and electrical work during college. So I actually think if you gave me the blueprints, I could probably do it.
Fair enough. Whereas I'm a DJ. No one's going to be asking me to do any brain surgery anytime soon. I can tell you that the second white male artist to be signed to Motown was Bruce Willis, and that's pretty much as high as my contribution to society goes. Unfortunately, we've got. Go on.
I was gonna say, like, in terms of other comfort food, I was gonna say, like, my comfort food has been comic books. I haven't been reading a lot of new comic books. I've been going to. I reread the original Dan Jurgens Booster Gold. I reread. I'm rereading Marv Wolfman's original solo Deathstroke series.
Nice.
So a lot of stuff like that. Like, I'm finding myself in terms of like comic books going back to the comfort food.
For me, it's been Warrior. So V for Vendetta and Miracle Man and Night Raven and the stories that are in there. The Justice League America and Justice League International. So Maguire.
Yeah,
and that period. What else did I dig out as well the other day? Millennium. That was one of the.
How'd that hold up?
Not great.
Yeah,
because that was the American comic that was the event series that I came into American comics when I was a kid.
Oh wow!
So I didn't come in through Crisis. I came in through Millennium, and I'm just like going, okay, I'm stunned. I'm still reading comics now. But that was tough. But if anything, it was great because the core title's awful. But all the ancillary stuff, all the kind of satellite books, they're brilliant. Green Lantern,
I just bought the new hardcover of Superman: The Man of Steel, and it's beautiful. And they reprint it; looks so good. And it
was the same year. It was the same. Yep. It was the same year.
It has the Millennium tie-ins. They're Millennium tie-ins, the Superman Action Comics, and they're actually really good. They're actually pretty good.
Has he got the issues where he goes back to Smallville and they're all manhunters?
No, it doesn't have that one. It doesn't have that one.
Basically, the idea being that the doctor that delivered all the babies when Clark, you were the only one that I didn't deliver. At which point the payoff is that every single person in Smallville is actually a manhunter agent.
Yeah. Although I have a conspiracy theory in Superman comic books, and my conspiracy theory is that everybody in Smallville, because it's such a small town, and as a person growing up in a small town, you know everything your neighbors do, no matter what, and everybody talks about your neighbors. So I've always thought that everybody in Smallville, Kansas, knows Clark Kent is Superman.
It's just the unspoken.
Yep, and they keep it secret for the good of the world.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring somebody in because I was going to hold off because Joel's going to come on and talk about his Kickstarter. But I'm going to bring Joel in because I'm certain that he's been reading. Because just to explain, Jason, this is not how his room usually looks.
Okay.
There's usually books and comics and graphic novels. It's just piled all over the place. So. While you've been tidying up, Joel, what books have you been finding?
Oh, wow. I mean, on Tripwire, we did this 100 graphic novels you should read while you were stuck in. And I really enjoyed doing it because we did things like the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams, Green Lantern, Green Arrow.
Nice.
I went back to a book called Silverfin, which was this James Bond Jr. book done by Charlie Higson and Kev Walker, which is a fantastic kids book, which they didn't do anymore, sadly. It was an adaptation of a young James Bond novel. So got things like that. Matt Wagner, Batman. I think there was the Trinity book, which is the Matt Wagner Batman Wonder
Good book.
which is a great.
There somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's up there on your shelves somewhere. So no, I mean, I read a lot of stuff. I reread the first volume of Akira from Dark Horse. I got reacquainted with some amazing things, and I really enjoyed. I reread Year One, which is one of my favorite comics of all time. It was fantastic.
It was great to see Year One get recognised on Lake's panel because they've been doing these desert island comics things. Where they've been getting creators in to talk about the 5 books that they would take, and Dave Gibbons turned around and said, "Yeah, Year One," and I just went, "Yeah, I'm down with that. I can understand that." But the fact that always gets me every single time is about David Mazzucchelli. The fact that I think he was like 23 when he did that.
He was very.
He was 23 when he did Year One, and that just blows my mind. Which means he was 21, 22 when he did Born Again.
Wow. That's
Fuck off.
Favorite
Fuck off. That's just insane. Absolutely insane. So okay, so we've been talking about the way that we've been consuming stuff and the way that we've been almost distracting ourselves from the real world, and it's for myself certainly this week and the week before. I've actually been failing. It's actually starting to get a little bit too much, and I've almost hit the wall for my limitations. I've come very close to fetal position. I'm really close to that.
Right.
For the pair of you, I mean, honestly, if it wasn't for this show on a Sunday, I'd be a mess.
Yes.
For yourselves, what have you been doing to stave that off? What have you been doing to just kind of keep the engine on the tracks, Jason?
Go on.
Well, I will say in pandemic, it's so weird because it sounds like that board game Pandemic. You're like, in Pandemic, add more green knobs to the board.
I've got a mental image of it looking like Mousetrap.
Yeah. I no longer have a commute, so right. In LA, I had like a 45-minute commute every day. So I don't have that anymore. So that's 2 hours of my life I got back, and so I decided to just start working out, and intentionally start working out more. And so that's been very helpful. And I've just been forcing myself, man. There are days, I think we all hit those walls where you just don't want to do anything. And I have just been forcing myself to keep writing. And I feel that has been helping, because when I reach the end of the day, even if all I did was 3 pages, that's 3 pages more than I had in the morning. And that at the end of the day, that really helps my mental health.
Sure. Joel?
Yeah. Well, I've been walking. I mean, even before this, I used to walk a lot. I try and walk at least kind of 5 miles a day if I can, just to get out and just to clear the cobwebs. So there's that. I have been going back to watching kind of old movies. I think in the spring, I basically rewatched The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. So all 6.
Oh well, never mind.
But I mean, I don't know Batman and Robin, but
listen, you and me. Sorry, Jason, just the private joke. I can defend the existence of Batman and Robin, Joel Schumacher's. It's not necessarily a great film, but I can explain why it exists.
Well, I think we all can. Money.
Yeah. Well, there is that as well. But no, for me, it's the lineage of the films. Is with the lineage of the comics. So that first Batman, 1989, is actually quite crude when you watch it.
Yes, now it is. Yeah.
So it's the Bob Kane, Bill Finger. It's the original comics. It's the original Dark Knight Detective.
Yes.
Then you get into Batman Returns, where it's a little bit stranger, a little bit quirkier, and then it's in the comics, and it's starting to go into your Jokers, and your Riddlers, and bringing in a slightly quirkier nature to the whole thing. Then you hit Batman Forever when the TV series starts. Then you hit Batman and Robin when the series really goes campy, and you get the film as well.
Yeah.
And then you get Year One and Dark Knight Returns, and that is the Nolan film. So there's this lineage between the films. So in there has to be your Giant Penny, your Mr. Mxyzptlk, sorry, that's Superman, your Batmite then. So you've got to have that kind of period to...
Where would you compare Robert Pattinson's Batman? Is he the Long Halloween? Where is he in that?
Yeah, I'd even go... I'm still waiting on things to start going.
Is he the Chuck Dixon run? Like
possibly. I'd even go possibly Court of Owls.
Oh, interesting.
That kind of like into that kind of time frame, that kind of tone. That well, we've had it also with. You could also say the Court of Owls stuff is Joker. So it's kind of that 70s Machiavellian vibe. So yeah, that's pretty much that's my theory anyway. That you can in fact.
That's not a bad theory. I mean, I'll give Batman and Robin mad credit for basically giving us the first Nightwing live action costume. So
true,
because his Robin costume in Batman and Robin is like the coolest thing in that movie.
Yeah, I gave up with that film pretty early on when Nightwing blasts through the museum, which has all been iced up, and the silhouette is the Nightwing logo.
Of course.
If you watch it, it's a Nightwing logo that he's come through, and then Schwarzenegger is walking through the floor of the museum, and he's being followed by a gobo light.
Yep.
He's actually being followed by a gobo light.
Yeah, that happens a lot in that movie.
Oh, man almighty,
they're attracted to diamonds. Don't you know that? Lights.
hard work, man. The top comics chatter, certainly here in the UK, it's been swerving violently between comics is love and a little bit of extreme dumpster fire. There's been a lot of conflicting views, and it's very difficult to kind of keep a track on comics chatter here in the UK. Reading comics chatter with the US, it's almost like they're trying to keep a conversation going and keep it positive, even when we've had DC shifting its distribution model and just the way that the industry has changed. For yourself, as somebody who studies this stuff and keeps a track on how the industry is going, how do you see where the comics industry is at the moment in terms of just its mood and how the readership is staying engaged with it?
Man,
that was a big question.
It is a big question, and it's a hard one to define because it's kind of the same answer as the pandemic, right? Where it's like, it seems like there are good days and it seems like there are bad days. I don't know. I mean, the pandemic is definitely going to affect the comic book industry, the American comic book industry, definitely going forward, like 100%. There's no way. And I think we're still too soon in it. I mean, that's the one weird thing about comic books is that you're sometimes always working a year ahead, or you're always working because publishing just takes so long. So I don't know if we're really going to see the true effects of it until next year. I mean, I sadly think we're going to lose a whole bunch more shops. I really do. And it's interesting because at this other side of that, we've been seeing like amazing successes with Boom and Image, like having these huge pre-orders. But I almost wonder if that is that's an effect of the shops going, like, just being excited that there's new material, that they're like, oh my God, buy it.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that will continue into 2021. I honestly just don't know. I mean, that's my big answer is I really don't know. My only certainty is that I think 5 years from now, the comic book market will look completely different to what it does now or last year.
Yeah. I mean, for myself, I'm really curious to see, because the conversation is always that whole idea of we're comics and we're great, but look at all the money that the films are making and all the ancillary businesses and all the things of that nature, and they're the ones that are getting all the limelight, and some of it's trickling down to the comics. Great. That's not there anymore.
No.
That's just, it's gone away. And it won't be back until Black Widow appears on whatever format it's going to show up on. So I'm wondering if we are now seeing the comics industry without the stabilizers. It's having to stand on its own, without the support and the attention of. I mean, if anything, it's almost been made up with the small screen. So stuff like The Boys and
Yeah.
Watchmen and Legion and whatever. Joel, I mean, do you have any thoughts on this? Where do you see the comic industry at the moment in terms of its vibe?
As you say, it is in an interesting place. I mean, obviously, films have gone away, for a few months. I mean, you could almost argue the comics is almost in the position it was before we had the Marvel movies, because prior to the Marvel movies, you had a comic industry that was self-supporting, and then you had the Marvel movies start, and then that obviously started to feed into the interest in the industry. I think it is very volatile at the moment. I mean, I like to think that positive things are happening, and we're all obviously hoping that things will get a little bit better. I mean, I'm echoing what Jason said, in that there do seem to be some successes. I mean, we tying into our Kickstarter, we actually did an interview with the heads of various comic companies. We're calling the State of the Industry in the magazine, which we talked to Eric Stevenson, to Mike Martz, to Stuart Moore, to a number of different people, to say, firstly, how did the virus affect you? How's the absence of shows affected you? What have you learned? What are the positives? And I guess the dust hasn't settled yet, but it will be a different place. Comics is already a different place to what it was 6 months ago, for good or for bad. So I think things will change. I think I'm still hopeful that next year will be a slightly more positive year, and we will start to see some shows back, at least towards the second half of next year. But the industry has changed. But, I interviewed Ram V also for the magazine, and he said that, businesses have to adapt. They have to evolve. They have to think, they always have to be at like the cutting edge of what's happening. And I think that this has shaken a lot of things up, for good or for bad.
Yeah.
And there were creators, I mean, going back to some more negative stuff, which perhaps we don't want to talk about, but certain creators who've had certain things come to light, it's kind of allowed kind of, less experienced creators to kind of step up and go, okay, we'll hire these guys instead. So in a very weird, almost perverse way, I think it will offer new voices more opportunities, which is good for everybody. So it's a kind of weird thing where we've had this incredibly chaotic year, which hasn't quite finished yet, and things will keep taking up next year. But there will be some good things coming out of this. But we're too close. Jason was right. We don't know where this is gonna end yet. But there will be some positives.
I'm going to offer an observation. I want you to let me know if you feel the same way or if it's just me imagining it. With comics, it's feeling like everyone is striving for the next big event book. They're looking for the next, every single book is trying to be the next Undiscovered Country, the next Wigdiv, the next this, the next that. Yes. They're definitely trying to be a big splash. I mean, the Keanu Reeves book, it's made its big splash the best way it can by attracting the attention of the Kickstarter element. Department of Truth, which is a great book, but that is it's an event now. It's almost like everyone's trying to look for a big event just to keep the energy going. Jason, any springboard off the thought of that?
I mean, it's interesting because I think you're 100% correct. And if you guys saw that Twitter thread from Jerry Conway about his thoughts on the modern comics industry, and I thought he perfectly nailed it with this. Going for an event-driven model is just a race to the bottom. It's a race to please a dwindling audience, because what a lot of people don't realize is that there actually is a very healthy and very successful and very profitable comic market in the United States and across the world right now. And it's YA graphic novels in Barnes & Noble, in places like that.
Scholastic.
Scholastic. Like Dogman is the most profitable comic book out there right now. And it sells millions and millions of copies. And it's one of these things where and it's part of the reason why I've done a lot of YA stuff, because I've always felt that that's where the comic market needs to pivot, because if they have been able to pull it off, then why can't Marvel and DC? And I do agree with you. I think I do worry that the problem with an event is the same problem with like a lot of superhero movies the last 5 years. is that there's only so many times you can put the Earth in jeopardy until we're just like, I don't care. I know you're not going to blow up the Earth.
Yes,
you know,
basically.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know, but yeah, I do think the bigger problem beyond event fatigue, I think, and I've noticed this trend returning, is the insane variant cover market has come back.
Yes, yeah.
Because I saw that Donny Cates's like crossover is going to have like 20 variant covers. And
really? I hadn't counted them, but okay.
I haven't counted. That number might be way too much, but it's at least over 5. And generally image books don't have, unless they're like an anniversary like Spawn, generally don't have a lot of variant covers.
I think I've counted 15 for Department of Truth.
Wow, that's a lot.
I would not be at all surprised about that for crossover.
And variant covers killed the market in the 90s.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering if it's a case of just to keep. I mean, it's not a case of getting the money out of people anymore with the variants. It's just a case of let's keep artists working. Let's keep them busy.
There's a case. And to be honest with you, one of the things I do love the retailer-driven variant. Like if a retailer is like super passionate about a book and then reaches out to the creators and there's a variant only for that store, and it's like, and if you don't live anywhere near that store, you want to buy it online. I think that's a great idea. And I'm like, I wish more books would do that. But yeah, the ones where it's like all this, like, well, if you order 100 copies, then we give you this variant. I think that is a road to Danger Town.
Yes. Yeah. Very much so. We've got a couple of comments that are coming in. Aaron Neighbours, who Jason knows.
Yes, sir.
Knows him well. Even if you are waiting for a vaccine, I've heard that at least 40% of the population needs to be inoculated for it to be effective. Not sure how long that would take. This would involve also 40% of the population willingly taking it.
Yeah.
Which, don't even get me started on that. And then Aaron Neighbours also talking about your exercise regime. Congratulations, woohoo, Comic Con fit. Absolutely. For myself, I've gone the other way because the wife's doing a really good job of cooking while pandemic is going on. So mine's going the opposite direction. Dan Berry, I went to a con right when the pandemic started, which was San Diego Comic Fest. Was supposed to be at Emerald City the following week, but cancelled my flight before the con was cancelled. Yes, the fact that San Diego Comic Fest, who are good friends of the show, can now hand out business cards saying that they are the largest Comic Con in San Diego. This year. That's a very odd thing.
That's very smart.
Yeah. So Comic Cons obviously need to change. They need to evolve. What would it take for you to go back, Jason? Would it be a vaccine, or could you see some kind of landscape for conventions for you to actually go back?
It would have to be a vaccine, 100%. I wouldn't even consider it. And then I'm even one of those creators where, and that has been a big lesson of this pandemic, is seeing people, because it is your life. You are like, there is a chance that COVID-19 could literally kill you, or you could kill someone you know. So I'm
not the problem. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna say this because I had this conversation with Hannah Berry, because she's got this is Hannah Berry, who's the comic laureate here in the UK. Great comics creator. We had a phone call today because she rang up and asked about my father. My father has had COVID. My wife has had COVID. It's not the people who have died. That's not the number that people should be paying attention to. It's a tragic loss, of course. It's the people who have caught it, because it's everything from you walking 500 yards and then having to take a break to literally not being able to get out of bed. You have been waterboarded by your own body. And we're talking an entire generation of people, a massive range. We look... Yeah, I was looking at a Facebook group, and they were just basically turning around saying, "You are aware this is going to kill running groups, because there's going to be a generation of people who don't have the lung capacity anymore." And that's when you suddenly go, the light bulb goes on, and you go, "Hang on a second, this is where people should be paying attention to."
Yeah, well, I was mainly using that to my thought is that I'm generally more careful with my health than I think most other people I know. Yeah. So You were talking about that. Yeah, you are correct. Like I have heard this wrecking people's basically respiratory system forever. And it's like, I like my respiratory system. I don't run that often. I would like to in the future.
Yeah.
So even with the vaccine, I'm still adding like 6 months past that vaccine before I even consider it. Like the vaccine will have to be a miracle drug, and the science will have to support that for me to even consider anything before June 2021.
Yeah. If anything, and this is going to be this is me being glib. This is the English sense of humor, so I'm prefacing it first.
Okay.
But at least when people are making it to the convention center, everyone's just going to be so shattered from the walk from the trolley to the convention center door. When they tell you to not run through the aisles, that's not going to happen. So yeah, I think everyone's going to be that's going to kind of take a little bit of the sting out of that. Okay, but that was me being facetious. So I look forward to your comments, internet. So I'm gonna let you get off because I think I had a whole shopping list of stuff I wanted to talk about, but I just wanted to have a conversation with you, Jason, because as somebody who is on the front line of virtual conventions, because I saw what you did with Mainframe. The interviews that you did were cracking.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed them. What other virtual conventions have got lined up? Are you doing the next Mainframe with Baltimore? What you got doing?
I don't have anything lined up with Baltimore, but they can feel free to call me at any point. No, I will drop a little bit here. Every year, I do the JASON Comic Drive for service members, where we send comic books to United States Armed Service members who are serving overseas, because I received one when I was overseas. Now, obviously, that is not quite possible in this world of COVID. So we are changing it to, it's now being called the JASON Charity Drive for service members. And full details will come out, but November 14th, on that Saturday, will be a 5-hour event that will be involved in raising money for Operation Gratitude. And we have some really cool special guests lined up, and there will be more details about that online and probably on my Twitter that's on the screen right here at Jawin. So JAWIIN. But that's the big one I'm looking. That's where all my focus is. But if Baltimore Comic Con wants to reach out, hit me up.
And what else have you got lined up in way of books and comics and other creative endeavors?
The big book we have coming out is Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio. It is our sequel to our Ringo-nominated All Ages series, published by Action Lab Entertainment, co-written with Ashley Victoria Robinson. It's basically...
Which is excellent. Go check
thank
that
you.
out.
Thank you so much. We're very happy about the second book. You don't have to read the first one to read the second one. We've made it very much like Indiana Jones. That's why we stole the subtitling from Indiana Jones. You'll get more out of it, but you don't need to read the first one. We set you up. It's perfect. It's basically our character, 17-year-old Jackie, is now flying in space, and she meets a character called the Black Flyer, who is our new villain, who can outfly her. And it's when this young girl thought that she could fix every problem with flying, somebody suddenly can outfly her. What is she going to do with her life now? What is she going to do with her career? What is she going to do with her superhero now? And she has to figure that all out. And plus, there's an object, of course, called the Forgotten Radio that figures into that story. It's very exciting. We call it Kim Possible meets Men in Black. So if you like either one of those, you're gonna love it.
That's a nice. I like that. That's a good elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Not
Right now, our book has been hit by COVID production problems. So originally the book was coming out. It was supposed to come out this week. It's supposed to come out October 8th, and then it was pushed to October 28th. And I literally just looked this morning because I always put the thing up just to make sure I have the correct date. And now Previews is telling me November 11th. So hopefully it comes out on November 11th, but you can pre-order it everywhere right now.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, best of luck with that.
Thank you.
All the success to the book when it does come out. I'd like to invite you back on a future episode because we could
I'd love to
continue
accept
the conversation. Like I say, it's been a little bit of a heavy one this time round, but I think that's where we are. That in a way is kind of like infecting a lot of us, certainly for myself. But hopefully we'll be a little bit more optimistic on the
It's
other
all
side.
good. I still had an
Strangely enough, I
excellent
think it'll be around November when I may pick up in mood. I'm not too sure. Who knows?
all right. Yeah, we'll see.
And or even maybe sooner if we find out that he's in hospital. But moving on, that's the whole other conversation. But there we go. Jason, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much indeed for coming on. When I started, I said that it was a respite from having a very focused idea of what we were going to talk about, and I just wanted to have a conversation with you, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. And thank you so much indeed for coming on.
It was look, I didn't think it was heavy at all. It was a lovely conversation, which is exactly what I expect from a lovely gentleman like yourself. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much indeed. I will take those kind words. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, sir.
Same to you. And nice to meet you, Joel.
Yeah, likewise. Take care.
Excellent stuff. So there you go. Thank you very much indeed to Jason for joining us. He's now going to go off and enjoy the rest of his Sunday, considering it's 11:30 over there in the US West Coast. So he's off to enjoy what he's up to, which now allows us to watch. Well, the sun's gone. We're deep in the evening now, so it's time to kind of come to a wrap up of the weekend. This was where the conversation was going to go with myself and Jason. We kind of touched on it, but we'll get into it. We've had two big virtual conventions happening this weekend. Like I said, I've been kind of hit with a real sense of pandemic fatigue, so it almost got to the point where I wasn't interested in taking on board the content. But also, I found that the two contents that we had, the Lakes International Comic Art Festival and New York Comic Con with Mainframe, with Metaverse, they were two very, very different contents. With Lakes, it was very cerebral. It's how the Lakes Festival is. It's very into the niche. It's not to be enjoyed, but appreciated. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And then you have New York Comic Con, where it's been 90% of panels I couldn't give a rat's ass about. It's been very difficult to enjoy this weekend, and it was kind of filtering off the conversation I had with the Mainframe guys and about DC fandom, how the energy that built up over San Diego Comic Con, and then and then it hit fandom, and then the balloon just burst. Does that make sense, and do you feel it as well?
Yes, I mean, to be honest, at the moment I've been focusing on the print mag, so I haven't given New York or the Lakes Virtual Festival my full attention. I admit, and my attention's been very strange this year, as has everyone's. I mean, I've been trying to find things to distract myself, but some days it has been difficult. So
yeah,
I mean, I was going to have another plunge into the Virtual Comic Con stuff probably tomorrow.
I think that's the other. I mean, we're talking about fandom and the fact that you had to focus on it on the 24 hours that it was on air. The content I can watch at any point and go down the line, even though it is premiering as the days go on.
Yes.
We do have some people watching on the Patreon page. Thank you very much indeed for Aaron. Thanks for Dan for sticking with us. What is your thoughts on New York Comic Con and Lakes International Comic Art Festival, if you've seen it over in the States? What's been your thoughts on what the New York, certainly the Metaverse content has been? Because, I brought it up, and I'll bring it up again so we can kind of have a look at the page. We'll make it a little bit more, zoom in a little bit so we can actually see what the hell is going on. So this is the kind of content that we've been looking at. Okay, what we do in the shadows, I believe, is finished streaming now.
I'm a big fan of that show, so I'll probably check that out.
Sure, okay, let's look at the panels here, and I'll kind of have a hit of the kind of thing that will be interesting to me. Animaniacs, fine.
Yes.
DC Comics Art in Focus, maybe.
That's on you. I mean, to be honest, if I was at a physical New York comic show, I don't do that many panels anyway, if I'm completely honest. I mean, I end up walking before and talking to people, and obviously this is a different kettle of fish. So I will probably look at a few things, but there are some panels there that don't really interest me either, if I'm honest.
Yeah. So I'm trying to work out where the interest is and whether it, because I mean we're talking about new, virtual convention as being the new normal. It's being the platform of fandom going forward. But it's got to have something there to draw people in. Otherwise, we're going to see the numbers which we've just seen on screen, which are quite disappointing.
Yes.
When 5.5, 6.5, 7,500 views is the ballpark of a worldwide available con.
And it's free as well.
And it's free. I struggle to see how MCM or ReedPOP can look at that and think we are knocking this out of the park.
Yes.
I don't know what to say about that. Yeah. So it's a case of finding a way to be positive about the landscape, especially when it comes to comics as well. Yes. If we can very quickly touch on a couple of headlines before we talk about the Kickstarter. I'm certain that you've spotted the chatter regarding Comics Laureate and what's come out of
this morning.
Yeah. What's been your take on that particular discussion? Just very quickly for everyone, the Comics Laureate is a position that was created for the Lakes International Comic Art Festival. The idea being that someone holds a position for 2 years and goes out and promotes the art form of comics, very much like a poet laureate or a literacy laureate or arts laureate. Comics Laureate kind of gives a focus and gives someone the ability to then start promoting the comics to a wider landscape. However, this time round, the Comics Laureate has been given, a position has been given to a retailer, not a creator. A retailer with a couple of bits of baggage as well. It's a question then of, is that or was that the right person to take the position? And is this the Lakes International Comic Art Festival once again shooting themselves in the foot?
I admit I didn't know about the baggage. I mean, can we talk about that without going into any detail?
Basically, there's some issues with the fact that he's a patron of the Lakes International Comic Arts Festival. He did put out a post about a month and a half, 2 months ago, saying that I am one of the 5 people that without me, without us, the festival wouldn't go ahead. He has a room in the clock tower where he sells books because he's the owner of Page 45. So there's money changing hands, and automatically that's a conflict of interest. So there's that. Yes. He has had comments in the past where he supported the views of Dave Sim, which is never a great idea. There are people that are coming out of the woodwork saying that when they have gone to Page 45, they've looked through the door to see if he's behind the counter or his shopmate, and whether if he's behind the counter, they've not gone because he's been condescending. Okay. There's a lot.
Okay, no, I wasn't aware of all of. I was aware of some of that. I mean, if you look at it on one hand, you had Charlie Adlard, who has played a major part in the Lakes as well. I'm not sure what his role was, but he was a major part of that show. So it's difficult. I mean, he's been a retailer who has, supported independent books. If you look at this as a kind of cold, objective observer, Page 45 has always pushed independent graphic novels. I mean, whenever I've gone into that room in the clock, so they've always had a lot of really cool indie books. So, I mean, as I said, as an observer, I don't have a problem, with that. It's difficult. I mean, you could argue that almost every person, whoever they picked, there would be potentially some kind of conflict.
And you've also got that idea of kind of automatically putting a target on your back just by taking on a figurehead role.
Well, that's true. If you're a public figure, then unfortunately you are a target for people. If you kind of stick your head above the parapet. I mean, I've had a few encounters with a few people over the years, just because I'm not a public. Well, I don't see myself as a public figure, but I do stuff which is kind of publicly seen, and so you have to. I guess you just have to accept it. and just try and concentrate on the positive. So I don't know. I mean, it's, you know, he doesn't seem like a bad choice. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if I've kind of crystallized my opinion about this, if I'm honest.
Fair enough. Okay. It was more a case of just see if we can kind of keep a couple of the headlines going.
Yeah, of course. No,
that's fine enough. Right. Well, let's have you talking about the reason why you are joining us for today.
Yes.
Because heaven knows you've been a busy chap with putting this together, which is your Kickstarter for the Tripwire Magazine Autumn 2020 print edition.
Yes.
Which is on screen right now. It's not overly ambitious. It's £2,500. It's not insane by any stretch of the imagination, and you're up to 1,200. So you're very close to halfway there, with 23 days to go. Let's talk about the actual project, because this wasn't your first attempt at crowdfunding, and admittedly you were really hampered by pandemic. Let's talk about that. So, yeah, the evolution of this project, please.
Okay. Well, I mean, I was thinking about bringing Tripwire back to print probably towards the end of last year, because a lot of people might not be aware, but we did a print magazine, you know, from 92 to sort of 2011, and we published sort of 50 odd issues, and, you know, it was pre-internet, and then we switched to the website in 2015, and then we did our anniversary book in 2013. But I missed having a physical object, so I thought we'd have a go at it. And so we started to try and fund this on Indiegogo. We picked probably the worst time in the last 50 to 60 years to try and get this funded, because we launched it in March when everything was going into lockdown, all the comic shops were shutting, Diamond was closing up its shop, you know, its doors for however long it was a couple of months. So we raised a little bit of money on Indiegogo, but we thought we'd have another go at it, and we thought we'd have a smaller target on Kickstarter, just to see if we could get this thing out of the door. It's changed. I mean, its cover's changed. The Bond cover didn't exist. Of course, they put the Bond film back, but we have a very striking cover from Russell Walk, so we thought we'd keep it. And it's still, you know, it's still valid. It's a history. The magazine's going to have a history of the 4 Daniel Craig films, talking a little bit about the new films. So, you know, I've been very, very pleased with it. I mean, it's to be honest, it's kept me sort of distracted from the bizarreness of everyday life over the last sort of few weeks and months. So that's been a really good thing, and I'm very, very proud of it. It's a, you know, I mean, I'm not sure if we can do any more print in the short term, because next year is still going to be very chaotic, but the plan is to do a digital quarterly magazine next year, and then hopefully return to print again in 2022, which is Tripwire's 30th anniversary. And we have some plans in place for that. So yeah, I mean, it's had a very bizarre checkered history, but I know we're not alone, and, you know, we're living in particularly strange times. So it is what it is, as they say.
You shared with me pages of the autumn special, and there are a number of the articles that are in there that did tie over from that original campaign. Like I say, we're talking sort of like the second, third week in the month of the year. So we're talking 6 months ago. Admittedly, the articles that have stayed in place are evergreen. So we're talking profile pieces, 1 or 2 bits and pieces. What has stayed, and what have you added to the new magazine? Well,
the Ramsey interview stayed. Kieron Gillan, with his weird thing where I met him for a face-to-face interview in February before the strangeness started, and I've incorporated bits of that. And then I did a new email interview with him. Flash at 80, because our other cover, the direct market cover, is the David Michael Beck Flash cover, which we commissioned specifically for the direct market. Joker at 80, because it's still the anniversary year, and it's still a very important milestone, you know, for the comics industry. I mean, I would say that probably 60% has probably stayed, and 40% has been replaced.
Okay. With a new I know that the campaign is to put the magazine together, to get it printed. Is the what you're asking for, is it to get a physical copy of the magazine, but beyond that, is it to get the magazine back on shelves?
Well, possibly. I mean, I'm being very cagey here, I admit, because I don't know what next year is going to be like for comic shops. So I guess it's to kind of, I guess it's to test the waters, to see if there's an appetite for a print magazine again. So we're going to do one as a kind of a statement of intent to say, look, this is what we used to do. You know, we're doing a brand new mag, as I'm very proud of what we've done. And as I said, to kind of test the waters. And we're also going to be, obviously the campaign also covers the cost of certain things, like we're running obviously a lot of perks. So we've got, you know, Tripwire masks, we've got some very nifty prints. We're going to have we're running some stretch goals if we hit our target. So we're going to have things like prints from people like Sean Phillips and Sean Martinborough and Frank Miller and Chris Weston and some other really cool stuff, which if we hopefully hit our target. So we're tentatively dipping our toe back into the water with print at the moment, and we're going to see where it goes. So we're doing a one-off. We want to make it a standalone because we want to make sure that this is a really strong magazine, so that if we don't do any more print for the moment, it can just be a really cool one-off magazine. So like we used to call them bookazines. So it's a halfway between a book and a magazine, because it's going to be perfect bound. It's going to be, you know, 100 and something, 144 pages. So it's going to be, you know, a really nice, hefty, full color, very lavish package.
Any ideas on how much it would cost if you didn't support it and found it in the shops?
Oh, well, the cover price is £7.99.
Fair enough.
If people want to buy,
there it is. I can see it.
So people are more than welcome. You know, they can buy it from shops. It was in Diamond. You know, the other edition is available, and people are more than welcome if they want to get the other version of the mag. They're welcome to order it, of course.
Dare I ask, the choice of the cover? Last mission. Look back at Daniel Craig as James Bond. I'm guessing that was made before the announcement that it's going back to Easter.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the thing about print and about people trying to get stuff out there. They are at the whims and mercies of things. Was there a discussion to change or re-edit the book to?
There was talk. I was considering dropping the Bond piece, but I'm quite pleased the way it's turned out. And, you know, the Bond film will be out at some point, so it still stands as a really good retrospective look at the 4 Craig films. So I think it works, and we're talking about evergreen pieces. This is effectively an evergreen piece. I mean, it talks about the new film. Eventually, it will come out. Hopefully, it will meet, you know, April's deadline. Let's hope that it does. You know, but I still think it stands, and also because Russell Walks has done a phenomenal job on the cover, and I just thought it would be hard to get another cover equally as striking. And Bond is a great, iconic creation. And
well, I mean, certainly as well. I mean, is the fact that it is talking about the films, but yeah, there's also the incredible comics runs that have been put together in recent years. Like you say, the books as well, which can continue the stories on. Yes. So there's plenty of Bond content. If anything, I'm actually excited about the next Bond film, No Time to Die, because at the very least, it's not directed by Sam Goddamn Mendes, which can suck the life out of anything. Okay, it's the Spectre and Skyfall were very pretty films. I mean, when they are photographed by a master like they were, they can't fail to look pretty.
I thought Skyfall was okay, but I thought Spectre.
Skyfail is what I called it. It was 50 years forward, 2 years back. I hated it. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about something else. Okay. So, what are your stretch goals? What are you I mean, with campaigns, as always, you've got the initial hit. You've got people's first initial intentions and interest. What are you doing and what are you adding to keep the campaign going over the course of the next 21 days? Is whenever, I think it's 23 days. So
I guess
what have you got to keep people?
We're previewing the layouts, you know, as we go. So every time there's a new feature, we put something in. And as I said, we're also going to be offering kind of limited edition prints. So these are Tripwire covers. So these are classic covers, you know, that people might not understand, and also some standalone images. So there's a Sean Phillips image, Sean Martinborough. There's some really cool stuff. Chris Weston. You know, there's some really nice limited edition prints that people won't have seen before that we're going to be throwing in. So if we hit the £2,500 mark, we're going to be offering those as part of the £50 level, basically. And also we're going to be offering the Sherlock Holmes comic strip, which I've written. We're going to be offering those probably in the £25 level as well if we hit, the £2,500 and each sort of stage as it goes. So we've got some really nice stuff for people if they help us to hit or even to surpass our goal.
Fair enough. And then, of course, you have to do the whole thing of absolutely putting yourself out there and annoying the crap out of everyone. Every half hour, sort of like tweeting something. Yeah, it's.
I've done that. So I've been invading Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and so I have been trying to hopefully not be too much of a pain in the ass to people.
Yeah, it's a tough thing too, because at the end of the day, it's like we were talking about on the main conversation. It's a very crowded marketplace.
Yes.
And as we get closer to Christmas, people are starting to look at dwindling funds, especially if on Monday, if we get the bad news like people are suggesting.
Yes, I know.
It's gonna prove difficult, and all I can say is I hope the very best for you. The reason why I wanted to come on is to see you, because I haven't spoken to you for a while.
Pleasure.
But also to profile this. But tell you what, just so people can enjoy it, what we'll do is I'm going to share the video and let everyone see what people can expect from the Tripwire Magazine Autumn 2020 print special.
Welcome to Fleet Street in the City of London. Fleet Street was home of journalism in the UK for decades, and Tripwire has always been about journalism, which is why we thought it was appropriate to film it here.
Tripwire Magazine has been running a successful web magazine since 2015, while our history in print goes back to 1992. During the interim, our website has evolved and massively increased its reach. Our views have grown a massive 4,000% in just 5 years.
Tripwire has long been known for being at the cutting edge of comics journalism and culture since its inception. In its long history, we've interviewed every mover and shaker in comics and related fields, from Frank Miller to Matt Groening, from Guillermo del Toro to Joe Kubert.
The history of Tripwire mirrors the development, history and growth of the medium over the past 30 years. Our remit is to provide a British slant on the world of comics, and this has granted us a very distinctive voice. We are very proud of our website, but feel it is time to expand the brand and return to the format that garnered us our international following originally. In terms of production values, we are avidly seeking to recapture the quality end of the boutique magazine market.
We did try to launch a crowdfunding campaign for this back in the spring, but the coronavirus meant that it had to be suspended. We feel confident now that with the comics industry reopened, we can raise the rest of the funds. Under an exclusive Flash 80th anniversary cover, the Autumn Special will look at the history of the Scarlet Speedster, as well as take a look at the history of DC's iconic villain, the Joker, which also celebrates its 80th anniversary.
In fact, the issue will contain 2 different covers. The Flash cover will be for the direct market, while the montage cover, exclusively for those who support us on Kickstarter, will feature an exclusive Russell Walker's James Bond cover in the year that Daniel Craig leaves the role. It will also look back at his career as Bond, and also offer a history of Bond in comics. It will also contain a Neil Gaiman feature looking at his long career, exclusive interviews with writers Kieron Gillan, Ram V, and legendary writer and editor Louise Simonson. Finally, we'll also look at how comic artists use comic tablets, Wacom comic tablets, to create their art.
Finally, we'll feature an archive section of classic interviews with the likes of Alan Moore and Frank Miller. We feel that the updated iteration of Tripwire is unique in the current market due to its broad middle-brow stance, as well as its critical yet balanced approach. Oscar-winning director and writer Guillermo del Toro said this about Tripwire. Tripwire has been for nearly 3 decades the touchstone of comic book culture in the UK and one of the leading periodicals dedicated to this narrative art form. Decisive, smart, and always relevant.
Best-selling author Ian Rankin of Rebus fame was equally effusive. Still the coolest magazine on the planet, helping young and old alike fritter away their lives with the best coverage of film, comics, and television.
Legendary TV writer and producer Mark Verheyen is also one of our biggest fans. Tripwire is essential reading, one of the best on the market.
Finally, Fantasy Grandmaster Michael Moorcock had this to say about this. Tripwire really is a breath of fresh air. Its layouts are superb, with great well-written features perfectly set off by the pictures, adding clarity and intelligence to every page. And it keeps on doing it. amazing, gratifying, a pleasure to look at, and a pleasure to read. We are excited to be coming back to print and hope you will join us in our journey.
Oh, sorry. Okay, let's do it one more time, sorry. We are really hoping that we can do it this time. Thanks for watching. One more.
No, I don't think we will. Excellent stuff. Nice video. You had a decent one on tap. What happened to it? Oh, hang on.
I wanted to reflect
on,
the new content, and we thought we would try and shoot it. I mean, your video was great. It was fine, the one from March, but it was just...
Yeah. Excellent stuff. I mean, I like to say I wish all the best to the campaign. I hope it goes well. It's very difficult to get a book out there. Number one, out there in a busy marketplace. Two,
yes,
a book which is relevant, because the ground shifts beneath our feet on a daily basis. So it's a case of the fact that you've got so much experience, and your writers have got so much experience on topics across a panoply of interests, which can remain evergreen to some degree. Like you say, you've got people who are still on the zeitgeist. Kieron could do with another hit beyond Once and Future and Die.
That could be the one. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? And then you've got Ram V, who is we've spoken to him before, and he's definitely the next great lights in comics.
Yes.
I can only wish you all the best, sir. And can you let us know where people can find out more about the campaign, about what you're up to as well?
It's got a very complicated URL, so can I send that to you, or do you want to just share it?
I think the best way to do this is if I put it up on screen like so. Bear with us a second as he types this in. Oh, I don't know. It's listen, I've seen a lot worse.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just put this up on screen. Kickstarter.com/projects/Tripwire100/Tripwire Magazine Autumn 2020 print special, with dashes in the gaps there. So there you go. No, do check it out. It's like I say, I would show willing and support for everyone who's watching this. I would support and endorse Tripwire, if anything, for the sheer the breadth of talent that the Tripwire team have, the history that they have with covering pop culture. They know what they're doing. They know how to do it well, and I would heartily recommend checking out the book. So there you go. I'll tell you how good they are. They refuse to let me write for them. That's how good Tripwire is. They refuse.
Well, you did
they have a standard. So there you go. They even let me record a video and then get rid of it because they feel it's just not good enough, and I totally get it. So there you go. Joel, thank you so much indeed for coming on. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about before we head off? Anything that's kind of caught your attention? Anything in terms of just stuff that you would like to discuss? Because heaven knows there's a lot out there. There's plenty of things that are going on in the world, which in pop culture as well, which I don't know if would like to kind of hammer out.
Which I would be happy to talk about, would be obviously with what's happening at the moment is, Marvel's shift to television from film in the short term, where you've got apparently the Fury TV series, you've got WandaVision starting in December, you've got the the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So it seems that in the short term that Marvel and DC as well, because DC have just announced its Green Lantern HBO Max TV series. I think it's very, very canny of both of them to say, okay, film is coming back at some point, but in the interim, we need to keep people interested in our content, and so they're both they've shifted the emphasis onto television, and I think it's very interesting. And I think it's a very canny move.
Considering that even a couple of years ago, it was almost like TV was the bastard stepchild. Absolutely. I'm trying to work out if that was not necessarily the shows or the characters, but just the people and politics of the landscape.
Well, I think it could have been to do with politics, but obviously the DC and Marvel have to be pragmatic now, and if they want to get their product, I hate that word, but if they want to get their IPs out into the wider world, while people are stuck in, to get it onto streaming. I mean, obviously you've had with the film stuff, you've had Soul, which is now going on to Disney Plus, I think on Christmas Day, which makes perfect sense. And Wonder Woman, there are rumors that's going to streaming. I mean, they've denied it, but since that's the only film that's currently still coming out between now and next March.
I turned around and said that the only two tentpole movies that are left over Christmas are Wonder Woman 84 and Black Widow. At which point, I think it was our good friend Mark Serby who turned around and said, "No, hang on a second, there's Free Guy, Free Guy and Coming to America." Oh,
are they actually going to the cinema?
By all accounts. And then you do have a couple of indies as well that are doing the rounds. The Highly Capable Woman.
Yes.
I think I've butchered the title of that film. That's apparently still coming to screens.
Yes.
There are some films that are still trying to keep the fire burning.
They're not $200 million tentpole films.
Certainly not.
And with Cineworld temporarily closing, obviously, I think it would make sense, for Warner to have a rethink. Unfortunately, it's a shame. I mean, it's been a desperately sad year for cinema, but it will.
It's. I mean, we were talking about comic book shops, and we could be seeing a number of those not reopening once we get to the other side of the tunnel. But I think we're going to see a number of cinema chains going very much the same way. I think we're going to see a lot of large buildings with some very big for sale signs outside them. So hey, let's leave on a positive note. But that's us for this show. It's been a pleasure to talk to Jason. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, Joel. Thank you very much indeed.
Yes, thank you for
coming on. One more time, if people can, you just let people know where's the best place to go, not necessarily just for the Kickstarter, but for your own stuff as well.
Well, if people want to go to tripwiremagazine.co.uk, there'll be lots of information about the Kickstarter and about anything else that we're up to, between now and moving forward. I mean, the website is still very much there, and we're hoping to do, as I said, the digital publication next year. So we'll do, a print one shot to kind of, as I said, to dip our toe back in the water, and we're not going away, and we'll see how it goes. And as I said, hopefully, because it's Tripwire's 30th anniversary in 2022, and we have plans. We have plans, for a new event. Hopefully, touch wood and touch everything else.
Well, I mean, the good news as well that I'm sure that Tripwire will have a big resurgence at Portsmouth Comic Con next year if it happens. Yeah, right. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
But we're trying to stay positive. Things will get better. Well, I know that winter is going to be challenging for all of us, but we get through it, and we get into 2021. Things are a little bit better. So everyone stay safe. And
I mean, I'm just doing my best to stay positive by just wearing my favorite t-shirt. So I've got my Snoopy. Nice. Monty Python mashup. I'm just trying to cheer myself up. That's all I'm trying to do.
New Snoopy animated shows, the Apple Plus.
I think that looks interesting. I mean, it's not going to get me to sign up for Apple anytime. Is it Apple? It's gone to Apple. Yeah.
There's two. There's Snoopy in Space, and they're doing a new Snoopy show, which we put a trailer up for, which I think is starting. I think it's next year. I'm not sure. It's soonish.
Well, I mean, I think I might stick with the Muppets on Disney Plus, but there we go. Right, Joel, thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's been a pleasure. Everyone else, thank you so much indeed for coming on and joining us. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Once again, tomorrow we'll put the audio version of this up on our audio, so you'll be able to find that on Spotify, on iTunes, and on SoundCloud. And then we'll post the whole video up for everyone else to enjoy on Wednesday. But from myself, from Joel, and from Jason,
goodbye.
Thank you so much indeed. Do take care. I'm certain you will do your best to stay positive over the course of the coming days and weeks.
Yes.
Let's stay safe, wash your hands, wear your damn masks, and let's see if we can come out of this the other side. From us to you, take care and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.